Hey YouTube, thanks for tuning in. What I've got going on here is I've got a Rheem Performance Platinum 80-gallon hybrid electric water heater behind me. I just put this in about 3 weeks ago. I love it so far. It tracks all of the energy usage. You can view it from your iPhone app. It's got a heat pump on top that runs, and so far it's been really good. The issue I have is after about 3 weeks of installing it, we started smelling sulfur smell in just our hot water. I read around on the internet and found out if it's just your hot water, it's probably the anode rod inside the tank starting to corrode. The problem is the instructions for this say it uses an anode rod, and if you start to smell sulfur, you can chlorinate your water. I could do that, but you got to put about $1,000 chlorination tank in, and then you got to put another $800 carbon filter in, chlorinate the water, kill the bacteria, reverse carbon filter it back out, and it's just a lot of work. So another company, if you Google around enough, I'm sure you'll see it, will show what's called a Corro Protect Electronic Anode Rod. It's up good for a 40 to 80 gallon tank, and it says right on it that it will stop sulfur odors, no more sulfur odors. So I want to put this in, but I get to reading, and it turns out the Rheem technical papers out there say this water heater has a non-replaceable anode rod. So I got to Googling around on a couple of the plumber websites, and some guy fortunately posted, hey, I have this tank, I think I found the anode rod, I think it's replaceable, etc. So basically, I took it upon myself to see if I could replace mine. So I'm going to go ahead and show you. I was able to replace it. The green light back there is the Corro Protect running, and it's working as it should. And I'll give you kind of a clip at the end if it's actually gotten rid of the sulfur smell or not. But what I want to do is show you that even though it says it's not replaceable, you can actually replace it. I will say, I do want to give you a couple warnings. One, if you're not a DIY person, I probably wouldn't try this. I did need to disconnect the electric from the water heater. It's 220 volt line, and you have to disconnect it and reconnect it. You got to shut off the water. You got to mess with the plumbing a little bit. Just, if you're not a DIYer, I probably wouldn't attempt it. Two, this has a 10-year warranty. You are basically completely giving up that warranty when you do this. You will void your warranty when you do this job. So I'm going to show you how, but I am not suggesting you do it. It's going to ruin your warranty. You should probably chlorinate the water like they say to. And then three, I have no idea if this rod is actually going to protect the tank. I won't know for a couple years. So even if it works for the sulfur, I have no idea if it actually does what it's supposed to and protects the tank. So with that being said, I'm not sponsored by these guys. I'm getting nothing out of this. I paid the $130 for this, just like you will if you buy it. And if you decide to do this, you're doing it at your own risk, and you're going to completely ruin the warranty on your tank. So with no further ado, I'll get into the rest of the video and show you how I did this. Okay guys, I just wanted to give you an idea of everything I wound up using to install this Corro Protect Electric anti-corrosion anode rod. So you can come back to this part if you want in the video if you need to understand, but I kind of grouped it in sections. But basically what I used was a set of gloves, my kind of own stuff, my set of gloves, and a Dremel and a shop vac just to clean up some stuff, and then some paper towels. And then to actually take the case apart, you're going to use a Phillips screwdriver. I had to actually use the stubby one because I had my case was so close to the walls, I couldn't get my long screwdriver in there. And then just a couple general pair of pliers. You'll see later I use these pliers. Those are channel locks to hold the anode rod from falling back in the tank. And then these I just use for general prying up of a plastic cap that I'll show you. And then I used a hacksaw. I had to actually cut the anode rod. This is kind of all the stuff I used to remove the anode rod. I had got a 24-inch breaker bar, and I also used some 1/2-inch drive extensions. I have 16 inches of extensions here, and that's exactly what I needed to reach the anode rod later in the video. Then these I bought on Amazon. This is a 1 1/16 inch socket, and then the 1 3/8 is what you use to put the new anode rod in. And then I just use this ratchet. Once I had this broke loose with the breaker bar, I used that short ratchet just to kind of ratchet my stuff in. And then, as I mentioned, the anode rod I had to cut, so I used the hacksaw to cut that. This light is super convenient. It has a little magnet on it. I got it from Harbor Freight, and it lets you kind of stick it on the inside of the water heater as you're working. And then it's got 2 different lights. So I used that a bunch. It was really nice to have. And then this last stuff here is what I actually used to put in the new Corro Protect rod. You need some Teflon tape. They don't give you any. And you need some dielectric grease to put on the tip of the rod. So I use those. I use the Sharpie to mark the spot where I drilled the wire to come out of the cap. And then I use these. I happen to have these extra bushings from doing some electrical work. So I use these to protect my wire. You'll see that later in the video. And then I use a 3/4 inch hole saw to cut the hole for the wire. And then I used a file just to clean up that metal a little bit. So that's everything I needed in the process of putting in, taking out the old rod and putting in the new one. Okay, this is a Rheem Performance Platinum 80-gallon hybrid electric water heater. And I'm gonna show you how to change the anode rod. First thing you're gonna need to do is remove this top cover. So what I'm gonna do is shut the power off and then shut the water off so that you don't accidentally have a problem. And then I'm gonna take these screws out and disconnect this electric so that I can lift this top cover off without this kind of giving me any trouble. So that's the first thing you're gonna do. And then there's 4 screws around the side, and then those 4 screws on top to remove this top. Other thing you want to do is pull this filter out before you get started. So I've pulled the filter out of here, and the next thing I'm going to do is get these 4 screws, get those 4 screws, and take off all those connections to the electric. All right, so what I've done is taken these 3 screws out, the 1 here and the 2 on these sides. And what that does is it basically loosens this whole pan up. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna disconnect the electrical connections and then actually unclamp this wire. And I'll just move this out of the way, this whole plate. Actually, I won't have to unclamp that wire, I take it back. I'll just loosen these electrical connections, and hopefully I can turn this kind of sideways. And then it will allow me to remove this whole top plate and not have these electrical wires hanging there. All right, last thing you need to do is remove this grounding cable right there, and then it'll allow you to pull this whole thing off of there. So I'm gonna do that real quick. Okay, so this is what it looks like with your electrical box out, the filter's out, and I've taken all 8 of the screws out here. And so now I'm going to lift this top cover off, and it should just come right out. Like that. Okay, so now if you look down in here, get a view down in here. What you're looking for is that little tiny plug hole right there. It's a circle. And if you pull this out, you'll see your old anode rod right there. That's a 1 1/16 inch hex or socket. And hopefully my socket's gonna fit in that. I have read that you have to sometimes cut that plastic cover off to actually get it out. The other thing you want to be careful of is not to damage this evaporator coil, except I'm not sure why from the factory it's so beat up. It's a little bit depressing that they beat that up that bad. But if you break this, it's gonna be expensive. So you gotta be real careful. So I'm gonna go get a socket and see if it fits in there. Okay, unfortunately my 1 1/16 is not fitting on this bolt, so I think it's a little bit bigger. I'm not sure what yet, so I went to the store and bought the next couple sizes up. The problem is they won't fit down in that hole now. And I read online that you have to remove that plastic piece or cut it out. So the first thing I'm gonna do is pull this foam out of here. And it's just stuck down. So I'm just gonna lift this foam up and get it out. I'm gonna use 2 hands so I don't rip it. And that'll give me a little more working space. So what I'm gonna do is take a Dremel and try to basically shave just around here and pop this cap off of there and get myself some room to fit the socket in there. So we'll see how that goes. I did want to add one quick clip in here. When I said the socket wouldn't fit, I thought the bolt was too big. What was actually happening, the socket was actually sliding down into the sleeve like it should be, but then it would just kind of sit on top of the bolt, but it wouldn't actually slide down on the anode rod bolt. So I thought the socket was too small, but once I removed this cap and got it out, it slides right down on top of that bolt. So sorry if my video was misleading, I was kind of making it on the fly, but in fact, the 1 1/16 socket is the right size, and it will not fit until you take this cap out. It does slide down in there, so it gives the appearance that it should fit, and maybe it's the wrong size socket. But 1 1/16 is in fact the right size. You have to remove this plastic cap to get it in there. All right. Mm-hmm. So I have dremeled off the top of this cap, and now I'm just trying to get this plastic sleeve out of here so that my socket will fit. And I'm afraid to Dremel down in there because I think the top of this is the tank. So I'm basically just trying to pry it out, and then I'm going to pull it out with pliers. Alright guys, I just wanted to do a quick clip to show you how I got this cap off. This was the most difficult part of the project, and I didn't get a very good video. So your anode rod's down in the tank, right? And this is the hex cap that you're looking at, and you're kind of looking at it and it looks like this. It has this plastic cap. So what I did to get this out is I took a Dremel with a sanding bit on it, just a round sanding bit, and I actually Dremeled around just the edge. I kept dremeling around the edge, and you gotta be careful. You'll see sparks if you hit the tank. And I hit just a teeny bit, but you just sand all the way around the edge. And then I was able to take these channel locks and basically grab this and rip it off. So then I was left with this sleeve down in there. And what I did to get the sleeve out is I took a flathead screwdriver and I just put it down in the hole and kind of pried all the way around and ripped the sleeve. And then I took my needle nose pliers and I got down and I grabbed the sleeve and I just twisted until it finally like ripped out like this. And then once it was off, it doesn't appear to damage anything. It's just in there. I'm not sure what it was for. Probably to protect the tank when they install that rod. But you're gonna completely void your warranty, just so you know, to put this in. All right, the next thing you do, if you haven't already, is shut off the water to your hot water, your water heater, and relieve the pressure. So I'm gonna kill the cold water side, then I'm gonna go upstairs and open a couple of the faucets to relieve the pressure, and then I'm gonna cut off the hot water side. And then that'll allow you to remove that rod without having it spray water all over the place. So I'm gonna go open the hot water.
I'm ready. Okay.
I might have to go where you are. I can't use it. All right, I was able to get enough torque with this breaker bar to pop the anode rod loose. So now I just got a little tiny ratchet on here I'm gonna use just to finish loosening this up. And then hopefully we'll be able to slide this thing out of here. What I think is gonna happen next is we're gonna hit the ceiling with the anode rod, and we're gonna have to cut it to actually get it out of here. The good news is I can smell the sulfur already. So hopefully this rod fixes it like it's supposed to. Ooh. There's water coming out of there. I think I'm gonna drain a little more water.
Okay.
You still, David?
Huh?
All right, so I loosened this up, and then I went ahead and hooked up a garden hose to the drain. And then as I loosened it, it kind of stuck to that air in the anode rod hole, and then allowed that. There was a little bit of water that came out of there still, so I must not have let enough pressure out. But that should do it now. So we should be able to loosen the rod and try to take it out. Okay, so as I guessed, we're hitting our ceiling with the anode rod, which is what I figured would happen. It's probably about the length of the tank. So what we've done is jammed a bunch of paper towels down in there. We're gonna cut it, but I don't want the shavings to get down in there. And then I put these channel locks on there as a backup in case we accidentally drop it. You don't want that rod to fall back in your tank or you're completely screwed. So we're gonna do the first cut. I'm just gonna try a hacksaw and see how it goes. And then we'll try to break it and then lift it up again and keep doing that till we get this rod out of there. All right, we made our first cut and it was enough to actually pull the rod out, but it's wedged in the ceiling, so we got to cut it again. So we're going to shop back out this real good, plug that hole up, cut it one more time. I just used the hacksaw. I didn't want to use a Dremel and cause all those sparks. So I just used a simple hacksaw and it took about 2 minutes. I did want to show you, this is the old anode rod. It's been in there for just under 3 weeks. Actually, it would have been 3 weeks yesterday. So it was starting to corrode pretty good for 3 weeks, I mean, to be honest. And it was smelling pretty bad, so I had to cut it up into 3 pieces to get it out of there. The Corro Protect, this is for a 40 to 80 gallon water tank. I just bought this on Amazon. You can just follow the directions at this point to install it, but basically I'm going to put some Teflon tape around the threads and then torque it in there and see how it goes. It says to use a 1 3/8 inch socket, which I bought, and you don't have to like super crazy tight torque it, but that's all there is to it. Like I said, you can just follow the directions at this point. All right, so at this point I've put the new rod in and I've tightened it down to what I think is tight enough. It doesn't give you a torque, but I didn't go super tight. And what I'm gonna do now is turn the water back on before I hook anything else up and look for water leaking in this hole, just to make sure those threads are in there good. And as long as there's nothing leaking, we'll put this thing back together and plug this thing in, and that'll be it. All right, I don't see any leaks, so that's good. The next thing we're gonna need to do, I'm gonna put the foam back in here and it should fit right over that rod. And then I'll need to run the power cord to that rod and then route it outside of this tank somehow. So I'm gonna look at a way to do that. All right, I've marked the location where I'm gonna drill the hole for the wire. I wanna stay away from that fan down there, and you don't wanna be against this evaporator coil, so I just kinda went right up in the center there. And then I'll go ahead and tie it back somehow so that it doesn't wind up touching any of that stuff. But that's where I'm gonna drill the hole. Okay, I just remembered, I have some of these bushings. These are for putting electrical conduit in something. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill out the hole and then I'm gonna put this bushing in there. Basically that's gonna be real sharp sheet metal. And when your cord's running through there, you know, this is a heat pump, it's gonna vibrate. And I don't want it to cut through this cord. So I'm gonna put this bushing in there and that'll just kind of give it some protection. And then again, once I get it through, I'm gonna zip tie it up so that it doesn't hang in those fans. But just wanted to show you that. So the first thing I'm gonna do is hit this with a punch and just kind of get a nick in there and then go ahead and drill this out. Okay, I did go ahead and drill this out to a 1/2 inch hole. It still doesn't look very big, but hopefully it's big enough. I'm gonna take a nail or a metal file and go ahead and clean up those edges a little bit, and then hopefully this grommet will fit down in there. We'll see if it fits, and that'll give me some protection from that metal edge. Okay, a couple things I missed explaining in the video, the previous ones. I did wind up drilling a 3/4 inch hole using a hole saw so that that grommet would fit in there. I didn't take a video of it, but I happen to have a hole saw and I went ahead and drilled that hole. And that makes this cord nicely just kind of not rub against that sheet metal. And then I put this cap back on. You know, it's the 4 screws around the side, and then it's the 4 screws on top. And then I went ahead and grounded it to this screw over here on the side, the case screw. And then I went ahead and reassembled this, same way you take it apart and you put your electric back in, and then put that back together. And then last you put this filter back in, make sure you put your filter back in. And then that's what it looks like once it's fully installed. And I did go ahead and plug it in, as I mentioned, and it is working. I will get an outlet installed at some point, but everything seems to be good. One thing I did want to mention is before you plug that rod in, I highly recommend you turn your water back on and you let all the air out of the system so there's no air in this tank. You do not want any air in this tank, especially when you turn the power back onto the tank. But I wouldn't even allow air in there when you turn the anode rod on. I'm not sure if it has to be submerged or not, but it probably just is a bad idea. But you certainly want to make sure your water's on and your air's out before you turn the power back on to the water tank, or you could burn up your coils, your heating coils. So anyways, that's kind of what it looks like put back together. Just wanted to show you that. The last and most important clip of the video. Did this work? Okay, I put this in on Monday. During the day, I finished it up probably about Monday at 5 o'clock. Monday night, we did some dishes, we did some laundry. I think I took a shower. I gave my kid a bath, and I could still smell sulfur in the water, obviously. It was an 80-gallon tank that had sulfur water. Tuesday morning, we took showers, smelled a little bit of sulfur. Tuesday night, gave my kid a bath. Zero smell, completely gone. Wednesday, both took showers, completely gone. So, does this work for the sulfur smell? Absolutely. Now, note, that has to be sulfur smell on your hot side only. If it's sulfur in your cold water also, you're probably gonna need to chlorinate your water. You got different problems. But if it's just your hot water, this has worked for me literally in 24 hours. It's unbelievable. So it's no different than if you just took the anode rod out. That would also work, but your tank would get corroded on the inside. So I'm hoping this does what it says and protects the actual corrosion of the tank. And I will say it has completely gotten rid of the sulfur smell. So I hope this video was helpful for you. I was really worried when I found out this rod wasn't replaceable and we had the sulfur smell, but I was so excited to find out it was, and I'm really excited to find out that it's worked. So all we can do is wait now, and hopefully the tank does not corrode. But I really appreciate you watching. If you want to subscribe to my channel, I try to do these one-off DIY videos of things I think are interesting. And if you're finding this interesting, maybe you would enjoy joining my channel and watching some of my other videos. So appreciate you watching. Thanks. Last thing I forgot to mention, if you have any questions at all about how I installed or what I did, shoot them in the comments area. I will answer. I try to stay pretty on top of those answers, and I get push notifications if I get a question, so I'll try to answer as quick as I can. Thanks again for watching.